everyone. It is 7 p.m. Time to call the Monday, October 16th, 2023 Westfield, Washington Township Advisory Plan Commission meeting to order. Staff would please confirm the presence of a quorum.
Mr. Deck.
Here.
Mr. Horke.
Here.
Ms. Kelleher.
Here.
Mr. Maui.
Here.
Ms. Bolger.
Here.
Do we have a quorum?
We do. There are no changes that I'm aware of to the agenda, so we move on to approval of the minutes of our October 2nd, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion regarding the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the October 2nd, 2023 APC minutes.
A motion from Matt Deck. Do we have a second from someone?
Second.
Seconded by
Cindy.
Cindy? Got it? Okay. Don't have anybody logged on virtually yet, right? So we can do this by voice vote. Everybody in favor of approving the October 2nd minutes, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Minutes are approved. If staff would now review the rules of procedure for the items on tonight's agenda.
Which one do I read? Is it this one? Is it general procedures and then public hearing items? Oh, there aren't any public hearings. Thank you. The department will introduce the petition, so general procedures for workshop meetings. The department will introduce the petition stating when the item was last before the planning commission. The planning commission and petitioner will then discuss the changes made to the ordinance using the issue list as a guide for the discussion. Once the discussion is finished, the department will summarize the final changes that are expected to be made prior to the petition returning for recommendation. Rules of conduct. Please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, then we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time. If you must answer them, then please quietly exit the room. We would like to remind those attending virtually to please mute your microphone when not speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is consent agenda. There are 5 items that are all on there and ready for our group approval. Is there a motion regarding approval of the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was presented in all of the staff reports.
Thank you. Motion from Andre Maui. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kelleher. Staff will please call the roll on this.
Mr. Deck.
Yes.
Mr. Horke.
Yes.
Ms. Kelleher.
Yes.
Mr. Maui.
Yes.
Ms. Bolger.
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved. Moving on, we have 2 workshop items tonight. So if the folks here with Town Run PUD would like to take seats of honor and start the festivities.
Oh, I can see.
If you are ready, we are ready.
All right, folks, and you guys record this, right? So we need to announce who we are.
We do. Talk to the green bar at the
All right.
ceiling there.
Listen, for your record, I'm Matt Skelton with Churchill and Antrim with offices at 116 North Union Street here in Westfield. With me this evening to my right is Adam Hill, owner of the real estate and owner of Lore Commercial Development. Also with me is Dale Piper with Epcon Communities and Scott Ferguson with Lifetime. So we've introduced this item before the council in early September. We've appeared to a previous workshop with you folks. We had our public hearing earlier this month. And there are several items that have been raised and discussed through that period. And we are to a point now where we've been able to react and respond and redraft plans and are here to kind of highlight the changes that have been made. the rationale behind those, and then respond to any other questions or requests that you folks may have. The first item that we have not forgotten about is we were asked to provide some demonstration that we're in agreement with our only neighbor to the west, the Miller family, and as soon as we have a concept plan that isn't gonna change anymore, we will be able to memorialize that, but we're in routine, like, weekly contact with them, so. And they understand why the plan is changing. Which leads me into the concept plan. So the issues that were mostly related to the concept plan that were raised previously, and Adam helped me out along the way here.
This was the first
Yeah,
concept plan that was presented with the PUD.
and just for reference purposes. And so we were asked to make changes to try to accomplish the village feel, to take measures to limit the visual appearance of parking fields, and to.
Mostly along Town Road.
Yep.
And
One
then-
of the suggestions was to move a building along Town Road.
Yes. I wanted to point those out, it's because we got comments back, there were 4 or 5 items, I'll point them out as you mention them.
Sure.
And then we can go into detail.
And then to focus on internal connectivity, and that was reiterated also by the neighbors that we met with.
Both vehicular and pedestrian internal connectivity mostly between the commercial sites, but also engaging with Epcot to the north.
And so if you, we'll put up the revised plan. And so with this revised plan, and we also have a revised sub-area plan that was not distributed, it's just the colored up version that would end up into the PUD. We have that ready, it's just not, this is not it.
So you may kind of point out those.
Sure, let me highlight these few things here, that we reoriented the small commercial, go ahead and, yeah.
If I may, try to move the mouse when you point out so it's visible in the recording.
Oh, okay.
Can you? Okay, here you go. So we took the commercial from 146th Street, moved it up along Town Road, and we'll show you some images of the commercial in a minute to kind of highlight what that commercial will look like, engaging outdoor patios, things of that nature. And that was one specific request.
And then if you go to the next plan, it probably highlights the internal connectivity, yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the questions that came up was vehicular. So if somebody goes to the commercial up here, how do they get to Lifetime, vice versa, at least in a vehicle? So you can see all of the interconnectivity. There's multiple different ways to get between both the commercial and Lifetime and out to the actual access road and to the north access road as well.
And pedestrian.
Pedestrian is all of the orange that you see on here. So Epcot has multiple points of access to come down from a pedestrian standpoint, whether they want to go to Lifetime or to an outdoor restaurant or whatever they want on the commercial. And Scott Lifetime's done an excellent job of highlighting this area. Scott has a really cool visual. He'll go into all those details later, but it doesn't end. It actually, there's a trailhead right here that's super cool, but you can see all the connectivity that we added from a pedestrian standpoint.
And then the landscaping has also been, there's been an extensive amount, more than it appears on this piece of paper, thought about landscaping. If you see
You can see from this plan
yeah.
here what we did.
And so these parallel
Throughout.
planting spaces really provide some additional relief. When you're looking into the parking field, you'd have to look, I mean, there's a lot of things you'd have to look through, but it provides additional relief having those parallel lines to the streets. And then by shifting the amenity area for Lifetime to the south, and moving some of the parking, we were able to free up some space along 146th Street to do some nice buffering, and then some creative things that Scott's gonna probably highlight here with trailhead.
And then,
It's more than a trailhead, really.
yeah. You wanna get into that later?
Yeah, it's
On the trailhead?
Yeah. Here, let me
Or
see. Let me see what the next one is.
you scroll all the way down just to talk about the trailhead, but
You want me to?
we don't have to yet. But
Well, then,
if you go
so-
back up,
Yeah, so that's the hub exhibit that will be incorporated into the PUD.
if you go back up to the one plan.
Go ahead.
The other item that was brought up was the cul-de-sac. There was a cul-de-sac that ended right here. We did away with that cul-de-sac and brought this road all the way down to connect to the access road, which really created a cool opportunity. One of the things that was brought up was what's the amenity area for the Epcon residents? What expanded amenity area? They already have a really cool clubhouse with a pool, but what's the expanded amenity area? So down here, there's 2 pickleball courts for the Epcon residents. There's also a trail in here, like a dog walking trail with a little area here, kind of a dog park, if you will. So that, when we took away the cul-de-sac, I forget who suggested that, it was a great suggestion. It gave us an opportunity to do some expanded amenity areas for the Epcon residents.
And then the next exhibit you've seen before, because it's part of your PUD. These are the character and quality exhibits for the smaller retail
Yeah,
or
so
commercial.
these 3 buildings are actually our buildings that we've either built or we currently own and operate. The top left image is just a kind of a character look feel rendering that we had done.
And then these are some additional exhibits. You want to talk through those?
Sure. Again, the Lifetime's gonna have a very, very high-end, excellent product, and we wanna complement that from our side. And so not only with the character of the architecture of the buildings themselves, but we wanna activate that entire corridor along Town Road. So it's gonna have an expanded path. It's not just gonna be your typical sidewalks. If you go to one image above that, the one you just were on. You kind of have this trail here. We envision that. So this is actually the Monon. This is in, I think this is broader, but this is Public Greens. But it's a kind of an outdoor patio space. We envision activity out there, restaurants, all that stuff along that trail and along Town Road. You can scroll through. Just some other outdoor patio images that we think that space will be highly, highly utilized by not only people who live to the north, but everyone will want to come. We're targeting some higher end local restaurants that I think will be very well received at that location.
And then we were asked to spend a little time detailing, and feel free to stop us along the way. I encourage. But we were asked to spend a little time showing the landscaping, what the narrative would look like visually that we had, and we've actually, yeah. Thank you.
So that specific exhibit is up here along Town Road in front of the townhome. So obviously Courtyards has already been approved. They have really great landscaping to the north of this where Epcon already is. And so somebody, I think, asked for more of a character exhibit of what would it look like along Town Road in front of the townhomes. So when you see that image, that's where it would be.
And so this highlights, as part of this exercise and reworking the plan a little bit, and Dale, feel free to jump in anytime, but we were able to shift the two east facing buildings a little farther west, I think at least another 20 feet and maybe a little bit more.
That's being further away from Town Road.
Exactly,
Yep.
and so that freed up a wider area to plant in, and so the plantings that you see here is a replication of what was approved to the north in the courtyard, so there'll be continuity from 151st Street all the way down to the main entrance for Epcon.
The main entrance being that northern entrance on the plan that everybody saw.
And so in addition to that replication, so the fronts of those homes are in the neighborhood, don't hold me to the exact number, but they're close to 100 feet from Town Road. And so there's a frontage place, if you go back to that.
From the right of way?
Yeah, that's just from the right of way. So from the actual paved surface, they're probably 130 to 135 or.
Right, but they're 100 feet from the right of way, which is what, 150 feet there?
No, from,
Town road.
yeah,
It's
right.
primary arterial, it should be
It's
150
a 75,
feet.
I think it's a 75 foot and a half, so it's 75, from the center line, it's probably 75
Right,
plus 100.
okay.
And so in addition to the landscaping that is being replicated along Town Road, there is, lot landscaping required in front of each of these homes, and I wrote it down here.
In front of the townhomes,
Yeah, it's,
4 shrubs, 1 shade,
Yes, thank-
evergreen or ornamental.
yep. And
More
so,
on
and that's a minimum, and then on the side lots, there's extra required on the corner lot.
Which you can see, right?
And so, and then this, what Adam was showing you, this is when things have had a chance to mature a little bit. I mean, this is basically what it would look like from Town Road.
Which it's an extension of your current fence and your landscaping down. So what the main goal with the townhomes is to one, provide a transition from the single family to the commercial, but also to make it look like it was one project. Because Courtyard is already approved, so they tried to extend the fence down and extend the landscaping down to try to make it look like it was seamless and planned all at the same time,
Thematically consistent. And then,
which they've done. It's
and this I thought was compelling, cause we hadn't seen, when we talked before, we hadn't seen actual pictures of these. But I mean, these are, I mean, I guess it's my biased opinion, but these aren't things that I'd be as worried about hiding as some other things maybe. So I know there's been other treatments to the north that were intended to hide the backs of homes, but these are actually the front teeth of the house. I mean, this is the best, the nicest elevation with high appointments. So that's the intention. So these, and then we have an exhibit here that shows what these, and these are all, forgive us, but these are newly planted. I mean, these are obviously still staked, so they haven't been planted very long. And same with this. I mean, these are pretty fresh, but this at least gives you the courtyard concept. And these hardly look like the rear of what one might call a townhome, but that's what they look like. They just look like the background.
Can you go back to the picture before with the front?
Uh-huh.
And again, for us, it was the garage doors. It wasn't the rest of the architecture, which is attractive, I agree. It was the garage doors. So, anything that we can do, and you've worked on landscaping, and I'll look at the details in the PUD, even if there are more decorative accents on the garage doors that could be added, just so that we don't, and those are probably not real hard things to do. I mean, I'm trying to find things that are easy and not redesign the project, but like you have windows on a couple of them, maybe others have decorative doors without something that just breaks up the monotony of it.
Yeah, there are a couple improvements over the rendering that you last saw. The windows are one of the examples.
Right.
In the masonry around the.
Right.
Yeah,
And I think we're just looking to lose the monotony.
Yes.
The rest of the buildings are attractive and you've already done a lot of that, but I still have some concerns with that. Not that it's a deal breaker, but I think it could be more attractive with just a little more breakup. I don't wanna see all garage with windows or all without, just mix it up some way.
But are you thinking that a standard that would require something like this, or you're thinking of something more?
Some kind of an anti-monotony thing for the garage doors. However it is that you would best feel comfortable writing that, because we could get all just the two in the middle, or all the windows, and I think that would help if this is just me, I don't know how other people feel, but we have anti-monotony phrases in our UDO for other things, maybe something that would fit here for you, that would not cost an arm and a leg or
Yeah.
hurt you too much.
You got it.
Do you pick the garage doors or
Sure, I'll pick them.
your buyers?
No, we will, for the attached, we will pick the garage door, so we can
Got it.
make some moves on that.
So they all need to be the same color as they are rendered, or can we perhaps help things out by maybe having another color on one or more of the doors?
Yeah, that's possible.
And I concur totally with Jenny, some anti-monotony,
Yep.
what we
Yeah.
haven't really discussed in a specific context of garage doors in the past, but we have had plenty of those discussions about overall neighborhoods. And my prior apologies to the people that are in Keeneland Park, I did mention that last time we were here, if you haven't been through there. My take on those doors is that they needed to be looked at more closely, because the variety of the things that were supposed to make them look better, make them all look the same, and I think they look worse that way, not better. So we need to not go down a path like that.
And I don't want you to do something that makes it look ugly. You know, you can write ordinances that sound good, and then when you build them, it's like, why did I make it that rigid?
Right.
I'm just, whatever you think works for your design team.
Knowing the owner, I suspect that would be photoshopped before we could commit to anything.
Right, yeah. True, but we can definitely take a look at that and make some improvements.
And so these are examples of the courtyard treatments. Not that they're all in the rear of the homes, and so it's landscaped, the whole rear of each building is landscaped this way.
And as a reminder, everything outside of our courtyard area is maintained by the HOA.
Right.
And deed restricted, you can't have anything, you can have playground sets, anything outside of the courtyard community, so.
Is there a science behind the type of fence that previous rendering shows 3 with black iron, and then one that's a privacy, or whatever the material might be?
Right, those are the two choices that we have, the wrought iron. or
So they could be next to each
privacy
other
fence.
on adjacent lots?
Yes, they can, the customer has that option.
It looks like here's an
So-
example of it right here. Yeah.
Well, right here is an example too, so you can see it doesn't, it blends, but that's a prime example right there.
Those are 90 degrees to each other, or are they actually parallel?
They're
Parallel,
Well, so-
yeah, they meet.
Well, but I think what you're saying is I think
Tease
they're
it, right.
perpendicular.
If a
I think this.
privacy
This
tees
is the
into,
Oh,
privacy.
that one.
And I think the goal there is the solid, you can see it up here as well.
Yeah.
The solid creates a little bit of separation between your neighbor next door.
right, and I can see the benefit in that. The question was prompted by what's down below it.
Yeah, it probably just depends on what's behind it.
Yeah.
Is what
And if
people
that's-
select, yeah.
Highly not visible from public locations, that's probably not a big deal. It seems like if it has visibility to it, that's pretty liberal to the people that aren't going there or living there, that you need to kind of think that through just a little bit.
I think streetscapes should be attractive, but I am not one that thinks that everybody's ought to have the same fence. I mean, some people like that and they all want the same mailbox there. I think people ought to have a choice. I think that's part of the variety that makes things interesting, but
Mailboxes probably won't be an issue here, though, that'll probably be central.
Yes.
Well, in your, yeah.
Contrary to Ginny, I think mailboxes that match are a benefit, but I do think variety and fencing, as long as the quality is similar, that's good.
This is just shows kind of the amenity areas.
So the PUD's been updated, and it specifically states minimum requirements for amenity areas, and these are just graphic depictions of what's been incorporated into the ordinance. So there, you select from among these things, but when they say community garden, it's not a patch of dirt. I mean, these are what EPCON does, so.
Estridge has community gardens in Centennial along the side. They aren't raised beds like this, but they are used and maintained and people seem to like them.
The older I get, the more meaningful that would be.
Good to know.
You just call Bob. He plants this huge garden and he always has extra.
I do too, and it gets less taken care of as the summer goes on, that's.
I can relate to that.
Yeah,
Signage.
and so just real quickly, signage, we were asked to, incorporate language that would restrict internal illumination of any signage. The wall signage was already addressed. But that language has been installed into the PUD, so there's no internal illumination of monument signs or ground signs or anything like that. And then we thought this might just be helpful. The one on the right really doesn't require a whole lot of creativity because it's already out there. That's their entrance sign for the courtyards of Westfield. And so the standards would allow the same type of sign to be installed at this new entrance. And then also the one on the left is an option that EPCON would like to have for internal kind of placemaking, so it can distinguish among the different parts. Since there's more than one part within it, it's just another tool for
So like-
placemaking.
Yeah, specifically, when you pull in here, maybe right here, identifying this area, here identifying.
And so that language, it's easier to see it with a picture, but that image is the type of, I don't know what to call it, but it's a different kind of signage.
And it's strictly to identify areas within the development, but not to include necessarily street names, which will follow our standard.
Exactly, this is just for EPCON, it's just EPCON. And then, what's the next one?
So I think we mentioned the trailhead. And I wanna focus on it for a second because it's super cool and Lifetime's done a really nice job with it. So these are, go ahead, just some character
Yeah.
images.
Those are built lifetimes, just illustrating the materials that we use for our facades, brick, stone, metal. Should we go to the,
I joked
Yeah.
earlier with the team, but if every building was built like Lifetime, there probably wouldn't be State Highway 32 overlay standards. So that's,
It'll look really nice,
Yeah.
there's no question. But I think what's cool is you guys had asked to get a building over onto Town Road. And so as we started working through the plan, it didn't leave a lot of space down below, so kind of in this area, for another building along 146th Street. It almost looked out of place, but we didn't just wanna not have a building or not have something there. And so Lifetime said, well, what if we did a trailhead type of a component? And so, go
sure,
ahead,
yeah.
because it's awesome.
We're all about making people live happier, healthy lives, so we saw an opportunity to implement a trailhead, a placemaking spot that, I got feedback from the commission that this is one of the last undeveloped gateways into Westfield, right? And that the APC and the council wasn't real keen on, a typical suburban outlot design, so we took that and thought of, again, making people live healthier, happy lives, and what a great opportunity for a gateway into Westfield with a trailhead hub kind of anchoring the thoroughfare plan on the south side of the city there by bringing in some agrarian and equestrian cues with the gazebo and the horse fence, the 4-slat horse fence, and kind of making a trailhead to where the community can gather for club runs or bike rides or whatever. And we thought of
Like a map right there.
yeah, like a
Shows.
city of Westfield trail map, maybe some bike repair kiosks. So it's like a kiosk and has tools and pumps and spot to fix your bike up before the ride. But the inspiration from it is shown on the images on the left hand side there, and again, just trying to underline the fact that this is one of the last undeveloped gateways into Westfield, and not wanting a typical suburban commercial outlot feel, And this is what we came up with.
I think what's important also down here is there's kind of an image. I think it's important to see the building behind it. I'm, when it comes to just design and architecture, like, I've never been a fan of completely blocking out buildings. Like, the architecture of buildings, especially a Lifetime building or the commercial buildings, will be really nice. We wanna feature them. They don't necessarily need to be, like the Lifetime building, you can see it's off a little bit, but you can still see it. So this is an image from looking west. This is an image looking north.
We tried to illustrate the connectivity, the pedestrian connectivity, the bicycle connectivity, the vehicular connectivity with those plans, highlighting how anyone on a bike or walking the dog or pushing a stroller can get from the residential community to Lifetime, and then not only to Lifetime, but then beyond to the trail system of Westfield and beyond.
Is the master developer then going to build and maintain this? Who's building and maintaining it?
Lifetime.
Lifetime would, you're talking about the trailhead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lifetime would.
And could you go to the last page?
Sure.
And this is just,
Our site, obviously, is right down here.
this is just informational, but the plan commission's challenge forced us to step back and really inventory the site and when we started looking into this whole cycle corridors thing, and there aren't many commercial locations that are not developed that are at the intersection of two cycle routes.
Like it's the.
I mean, that's a big deal, and it'll become more of a big deal. Dale and I were joking earlier, he probably bikes more now than I do, but I used to cycle quite a bit, and Town Road was one of my favorite routes.
Oh, Greg Dempsey,
Yeah, oh yeah, he did.
engineer.
But, I mean, as the city improves its roads, that's one of the ones slated for commuter bicycle lanes, so it would fold very nicely into this project.
So I've got it, go ahead.
I like the gazebo idea, because often we have pocket parks in subdivisions or places, but nothing that somebody can get out of the shade or out of the sun or out of the rain, I mean, into the shade, out of the sun, out of the rain. And I really think that's attractive and is a great idea, and I hope that's included, some kind of covered building,
That's the plan.
okay?
I will tell you, we've been working on this thing a long time. But I will say that, some of you have seen the previous development plans that we submitted. Previous meaning like 2 years ago. We're really, really pleased that this is what we have ended up with, versus the 2 year ago plan. And so we've truly tried to listen to everything that you all have suggested, because there's been some really good suggestions, and tried to put together a plan that satisfies a lot of those comments, if not all the comments. I think we went through at least 4 or 5 of the comments, Lauren, that you kind of summarized from the first workshop meeting, and I think we've satisfied all of them. So I just want to say that because I know it's been a long process for all of us on this site. We know how crucial the site is, so we're taking great responsibility. We're taking that very seriously to get it right. So yeah. So any questions? I'll go back, tell me what slide you want, but I'll go back to the kind of the site plan if you want me to.
Just general comments, compared to what we had 2 years ago, this is a huge change. And you're smiling and you're enthusiastic, and I think you like this better.
Oh, yeah.
I certainly know I like it better. I think it finally gets to that connectivity and more of a village site and all the things that we were looking for in this site, so.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you.
Concur totally. Would have been nice if it hadn't taken 2 years, but it's probably gonna,
That's
been
okay.
worth the wait.
Some of these things take a little time.
That's okay.
Sometimes.
I think it's more important to get it right than it is to rush it through.
Yeah, and sometimes I kind of feel like a witch, we keep pushing people, but I think it was worth it that we pushed you to come back and
The
redo it.
result is better.
Yeah.
Kinda like I always used to ask my kids, do you wanna do it right or just get it done? Like, don't answer quickly, there's only one right answer.
Yep.
The little community pocket thing.
Yeah.
That's hopefully looking like it's gonna be kind of a growing thing maybe. Maybe you'll be the first to have it there, because we do have two others that are in approved plans that are yet to show up, but we have a little like whatever thing on South Union at a Pulte townhome development just north of the cemetery across from the old apartments. And then another one up towards Grand Park at the roundabout where Park and Wheeler and John Gill come together. There was a commercial building on the corner that needed to have something and go like their area for just, random use is there. And if it's something that we can have on all corners of the community, it'll make it easier for somebody who's not as adept at making sure that they're ready to go before they leave to actually get back, because they may have a
Well, if there is,
repair
like,
they'll be
bring
able
up
to
the
take care
gazebo,
of.
if there's a storm or something, you might have 20 people in there, or 15 or whatever, waiting. That's nice.
Yeah, and part of the idea was a spot for the community to meet up, go for a bike ride, go for a run, provide the facilities, and then, kind of book in one side of town road with that gateway into Westfield element, and then, listening to, Mrs. Bergman by incorporating, visual cues of, the agrarian architecture and equestrian horse fences, and, I think it's got Westfield written all over it myself, but that's me.
It's a gathering place, be sure and put a lightning rod on it maybe
Yeah.
for those stormy days.
This is so rare, I don't have much to say, except for I appreciate the changes that have been made.
Just gonna
I
punt
was
that.
hoping this would happen once before you.
I know, it's like 20 years, Matt, and look, it happened.
I've never been so impressed in my life. Congratulations.
Can I ask or not?
I mean, I'm very impressed. It looks fantastic, but to leave Cindy speechless means you guys have climbed a new mountain. So congratulations.
That's what,
We truly have tried to listen to all your comments and suggestions throughout. And a lot of those comments came 2 years
so
ago.
they can say something.
Dale and I, and Matt has a privilege of hearing all of those, and a lot of those went into this too, so.
I'm really hoping though that you have lots of cameras at that Lifetime Fitness to enhance your security. Not just, I mean, it's
We
for
do.
any business like
Yep.
yours that is facing that.
Yep, we have a very robust system for sure.
I have a comment that is kind of outside of the plan commission. There is a place called Woody Warehouse. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Woody Warehouse. It's in Lisbon, Indiana.
Lisbon?
Lisbon. I think
Lisbon.
it's Lisbon.
Liztos.
TOA.
Yeah.
They do a type of tree, they call it a forest root system. Basically what it does is you get a tree that's about this tall, which is a little bit bigger than a whip, but it has a root ball, it has a root system this big. They grow it over air or something, I can't remember how they do it. Anyway, a balled and burlap tree takes a year or two before it even starts to grow, because that's got all of its roots cut off and it's been balled up. These take off immediately, almost like a whip. They are drought tolerant because they have a big root system. They're not dependent on a root ball that you gotta get rain and, or hang those bags on them and all that kind of stuff. My husband and I planted 500 of them, about 20 years ago. And in 3 years,
They're huge.
they were at least 25 feet tall.
Wow.
And now, they're 50 feet. And we thought we were gonna lose some in reforestation plantings. You usually lose 10%. I think we lost 5, and I think 3 of them are because I mowed over them. But I do contract
What are the trees
growing.
called? Do you know what they're,
It's called a forced root
forced, like
growing
forced?
system. Forced root growing, and they grow all kinds. And I'm not trying to sell them. There may be other companies that do it. But we see these trees that are planted and 5 years later, they're, you know, maybe 3 inches taller because that's the way the balled and burlap work. So you might look into them.
That's a really good suggestion. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I practiced landscape architecture for 12 years
Really?
before coming to Lifetime, yeah, so I have I'm a closet tree hugger, you know, I have a
Okay.
passion for this stuff and I know exactly what you're talking about, but, you know, one of the things we pride ourselves on is being environmental stewards and specifying native and adapted
Right.
material, right? And sometimes we even go so far as to zone our irrigation, so once those native trees, shrubs, ground covers, meadows are established, we can turn off that irrigation, that potable water source,
Right.
and let it go like it's supposed to go.
That's great.
And then if there's, you know, extended droughts or something, you know, we have a zone, we can just turn it on, give everyone a little drink of water and.
You will love Woody Warehouse. It was started by a forester, and the way he started it was he went around the state of Indiana and collected acorns and things from trees that he liked that tree. That's a gorgeous shape. I'm gonna get a bunch of acorns.
I'm
He
gonna
has
check it
since
out,
moved
yeah.
on
That's
and
interesting.
that's more commercial, but that's how it started.
There's another bit more air miles.
Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
Matt, did you offer any? Were you good?
I'm good with whatever I offered.
Okay.
And I don't have everything
You
to
have
add, I
ample
like it.
opportunity for any thoughts?
Yeah, I like it, I don't have anything to add.
So Lauren will get
Everyone's
with you and
good.
figure out how to
I had,
reference all these things properly
Yeah.
in the PUD.
I had texted Dave Schmidt because he said he might join. He hasn't responded that he's on. He doesn't need,
Sorry, just saw the text, but yes, I'm on.
all right. Wanted to be sure and give you an opportunity, and if you were,
Yeah, thank you.
attention to.
And I just agree with what's already been said. The one question I guess I had for Matt is the trailhead gateway plan, is that, I assume that's gonna be incorporated into PUD?
Yeah, you may not have heard it. I, to Lauren that, this week, very soon here, to try to figure out how to reference all the things we've discussed
Sure,
in
sure.
PUD.
Okay. No, that's all for me, thank you.
All right, thanks for joining. If there's nothing else, staff, do we have anything to have for us to make sure that everybody leaves on an equal understanding?
Not that I can think of.
These are things that I kind of highlighted in my notes, the garage doors facing town road, some sort of anti-monotony, something for those. And then this forced root growing system.
Yeah,
tree.
that's
Oh,
irrelevant
you
to
don't
the
want that in
discussion.
there.
I just wanted to give them that
Off the record,
information.
Off the record.
I don't really necessarily have anything other notes-wise for changes to the plan or document, so if you have something else.
We'll listen to this and we'll have questions and you guys can direct us how you want us to memorialize things.
Thank you all for.
Before you
very much.
bolt here, I mentioned that this is not a public hearing meeting, but we have representatives from our fire department. So we're here, I think initially primarily, as they explained to me, more for having concern about the next conversation, but there is a little bit of one regarding healthcare facilities, if you gents one of you relate a few comments that brought you here tonight.
Yeah, not relating to this project, I think more so with what they're bringing up, but healthcare facilities and things like that as they come in, and obviously they're needed and we're not in opposition to those facilities, but I just wanted to bring to light to the builders and the people in the room that over the last 5 years, the 6 facilities that we currently have in the city equate to 25% of our EMS calls. So when we're talking about adding potentially up to 3 or 4 more, I have concerns. And so just throwing that out there, 25% of all of our EMS runs over the last 5 years have been to assisted living facilities.
And only 6 of them.
Is that because
We
there's
only have
old
6.
people here that
No.
need service?
Quite honestly, our older facilities are better patrons and uses of our resources. The newer facilities that we have are the worst contributors to the use or abuse, in some cases, of our services. So just wanted to bring that up. An expectation from, public safety is, if it's a 100-bed unit, we're gonna get about 100 calls a year there. But we have some that are 120 and we get there 50 times a year, which is great. And we have some that are 150 and we go there 500 times a year. That's not so good. So,
Are they skilled nursing places?
yes, absolutely. Memory care, the whole meal deal, everything from soup to nuts, it's there in those facilities. And those are typically our worst offenders, quite honestly.
You don't have to respond to this on the record, but I mean, are they're abusing though? I mean, they're like calling you in to do something they should be able to do, you think?
I will say that, when we get dispatched, it's a 911 call and we can't turn down a 911 call. So if they have called for an interfacility transfer unit and have been turned down 3 times and they call 911, that's a possibility.
Got it. Noted, thank you.
And that's obviously more for the folks that are on deck. You had mentioned something though about health clubs being, I guess that's more of a police concern than.
You know, the equate is, a gym, a health club is, the police department's equivalent to an assisted living facility on the EMS side. So the comment about, do you have security and this, that, and the other, with all the trees, there's a lot of obscurity, and if you don't have camera systems in place, it just screams smash and grab as people park there and go in to work out. So, and that's a police matter, but I am here part of public safety. Just consider those things as those units and those types of projects come into the city, because it's a big deal. We're trying to keep up with the growth that we currently have or that is coming down the pipeline, but when we're going to out of the last 20,000 calls over the last 5 years, 25% of those have been to an assisted living facility. That's a big number. And there's a cost that equates to that. We've spent $475,000. There's been a cost of $475,000 and some change over the last 5 years. Our resources going to those facilities. So,
The tricky part is a lot of times they're in TIF districts.
Yeah.
And so we're not even collecting revenue to provide those personnel services, really.
This sounds like I appreciate your coming and letting us know, because that was sort of something that I think Kristen brought up as not a complaint, but a concern that we need to be aware of, so we can do appropriate planning and budgeting. And it would be, I think, appropriate for maybe you to talk to the new mayor and the new council, because there may be lots of different ways to address this.
yeah, and by no means am I in any opposition for a gym or a workout area
Or places where people get healthy.
We like to call it an athletic resort.
athletic resort. Like that.
So if they do a good enough job of using your facility, by the time they get to the other facility, they won't
Right,
be in
they're
as
not
much
as-
need of your service.
Exactly, that's perfect.
There'll be just as many calls, it'll just be later.
But just like our roads, we need to plan for future development and budgeting, and do the
This
same
club?
for the
Oh
fire
yeah,
department and this
this will
kind
be
of
a
issue, so
flagship,
I may be. a
first of
member.
its kind, yeah.
Just wondering.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
legit.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Much nicer than one in
Appreciate it.
Castle.
The drive to Castleton gets a little hard
Right?
sometimes.
Yeah. Kind of like in the middle of nowhere too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't really fully introduce that one the way I typically would, that was the town-run PUD, which was petition 2310-PUD-11.
Big program.
Here, do you want?
Communities that I represent.
You have to let us know.
Well, that's like,
Now moving on to Wheeler Landing PUD Amendment
my only
8.
concern with their project is.
Gets ready, and that petition is 2310-PUD-13.
Close to the street, I love the trees, but let's back them off the street so we can get through. Things like that. Thank you.
They heard what you had to say.
Yeah.
Make sure that your
Any
time was
questions?
worth coming. You can stick around and listen to more. You're welcome to. If you have some other duty you need to attend to, we
He was
Be
gonna talk
offended.
about trees and close to the street.
No, I think all I would say as chief is we're happy to, have a, obviously, that's a bad look on the industry. I don't think, it's not this operator is not in the market. I can have Troy or Nathan talk a little bit about, first of all, Russell Brown for the petitioner, 320 North Meridian Street, Suite 1100 in Indianapolis. Different operator, they do have facilities in central Indiana and be happy to kind of coordinate with the department on what their standard operating procedure looks like. This is as far as, not a skilled nursing facility, this is independent living, assisted living. It does have memory care units, which, generally those have ADL kind of issues, but aren't a skilled nursing facility. And so, Troy, you want to talk about kind of your history or whatever, but we can absolutely make an introduction on the operations side with the department to make sure that that's not standard operating procedure for this operator, because I've been told it's far from their current expectations and experience. So I think, I think that's a very real issue. I think this operator might have a different track record than some. I don't represent any of those others, so I can't speak to them. But I do represent this one and feel they have a different track record in their communities of similar size in the area. So I'm gonna try if you want to add anything.
Troy Birch, Leo Brown Group, 802 East 86th Street, Indianapolis. All of our assisted living facilities are managed by our sister company, Traditions Management, which is a local company right on 86th Street. So we pride ourselves in being a local operator, not only the developer, but we're the manager and operator. So we are happy to set up any meetings that you'd like to discuss with our management team. We definitely don't want to abuse the system, definitely don't. We want to be a good neighbor, we all live here locally. So anything we can do to appease any concerns you have, we definitely want to work with you because we're here for the long haul.
And I think the chief also mentioned something about trees and access and things, so hopefully that's something that normally happens at TAC, but if you guys can get together, maybe that would be helpful too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, JD, and here.
Pardon?
Tree issue on this location, on this project specifically?
Not this project, just projects in general.
Okay, I just wanna make sure I understand the
Back
context.
them off the streets so we can drive up and down them, is my only comment.
It's an ongoing discussion.
Those trucks look a lot bigger when you're inside looking out than watching them go by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night. All right, we are now ready for Wheeler Landing, your intro and update for us.
So I would say that our update is, that was we felt like there were probably three things that came out of Plan Commission. That was one of them, obviously, that we took away was that kind of how we impact and what are the issues related to it. I think there was a question related to landscaping and what does it look like and how do we interface with the legal drain, with floodplain and some of those issues. Legal drain, we've had some initial comments, but don't have a final verdict on, is there additional landscaping that we can add in the legal drain? As you know, as we talked about a little bit at public hearing, it's controlled by statute, by the county surveyor's office. We are working to have discussions about what plantings and what maintenance can a private property owner do on that through some sort of maintenance agreement, joint maintenance agreement, so that we could control it, so that the county surveyor isn't in there with their mowing crew and or others maintaining it. Don't have an answer to that. What I can say is that we can comply with the landscape obligations outside of the drainage of the ditch, of the regulated drain area. We're confident that we can do that. So anything that we could do inside of that would be in addition to that opportunity. I'll tell you, I think everyone looks at it as an opportunity to have something nice there, instead of a pile of rocks that is mowed, or is maintained sparingly by the county surveyor's office. So there's incentive by the developer's side to try to make that a more attractive amenity. That was a comment that we took away, and then the other was, I think just if there was further conversation, we did not get into architectural requirements or any of that in the initial public hearing meeting. happy to talk through that. Nathan has a couple of maybe closer views of the villas specifically, and then the front kind of entryway. I did not get those to Caleb in advance, but we can get them, we can throw them up here, or we have them on flash drive or whatever, so we can make that happen. And we talked a lot about side elevations on the villas. We've made adjustments to that, including not asking for relief from the roof pitch, have it elevated exterior facade requirements that are exterior facing. So we didn't prepare a bunch of updated exhibits. I think that our view of it and our take from the initial public hearing was there are a handful of questions, but maybe more of a discussion was necessary to see if there was additional edits that need to be made. But we did not prepare a bunch of additional modifications just based on the original discussion from Plan Commission. So, if you have, do we have the ability to share from here?
I can share screen or. Well,
Is it on your?
it's on my computer. I don't know if I can remote in or I can, more than happy to put on flash.
That'd be easier than we
Yeah.
While we're doing that, I do have a question. I haven't been out and looked at this. Is there water in the legal drain or is this just a swale?
It depends on the weather. It was dry the day I went down and we had rain probably earlier in the month.
Okay, but it's not really a creek like some of our legal drains? Okay. Because I know the legal drain that runs through the corner of my property does have water in it. Everybody calls it a creek, but it's not a creek, it's a legal drain. And you can't do anything 75 feet from the top of the bank. I don't know if this has a bank and they go 75 feet from that or how they classify this.
That is not me. Which plug did you end up using?
I did the HDMI.
HDMI, okay.
But even if you can't do anything in the legal drain, because they might mow it or do whatever, you could enhance the landscaping on your side of it.
Correct, yeah.
And I think if the county surveyor would allow us to maintain that, that would be our preference. We just haven't gotten a
Good luck
confirmation
with
back
that.
for that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And talking about too, what plantings could be
that's okay.
installed, whether it be
That's easier.
native grasses that could be in there instead of
Right, right.
a rocky ditch.
I got I can't remember what they call it anymore, but a right to do something within that 75 feet on my property. But then I found out that they let me do it, but if they ever wanted to come do anything, they'd just tear my fence
Yeah,
down.
it's an
So it
it's
was
an
really
encroachment
worthless.
agreement.
Yeah, and I
get
thought,
'em
well, I
for-
went through all this trouble and then it really didn't mean anything, so.
Yeah, no, that's what we're trying
pay
to
for
iron
it,
out,
so.
is there a reciprocal maintenance opportunity or something so
Right.
that we can do something that it's not just,
Sure.
they're the only ones maintaining it. First, we just don't control that, but, no, I've got encroachment permits in other counties for clients, but, yeah.
All right, you're not plugged in, so that's you up there.
So, do we wanna just go on to
Yeah,
facades?
I think we just look at the facade you did.
Sure. So we've seen the watercolor of just kind of the front entry. The idea here is to just give an impression or a characterization.
It was working so good. Signal.
I lost all my emails.
Did you breathe on it?
They just
I
went away.
took a deep breath before I started.
Trying to find it in crampling hours.
I was trying to do something, I probably did.
Switch away from, oh, there it is.
Don't
Don't
move.
So yeah, we've spoken about the front elevation. This is a characterization of the site. It's just to kind of get you to see what our intent is without implying total design understanding yet. Be a mix of brick and hardy plank. Pitches are all seen at 612, so they're at the minimum the city allows, as well as introduction of small accoutrements like chimney peaks, dormers, just to kind of create some interest along our roof line. It also kind of creates these stacked levels as we go from 2-story on the south end of Dartown to 3-story at the intersection of 181st and Dartown.
Are those roof accoutrements in the written in the PUD somewhere?
They are not, but what we're trying to do is just kind of, just like our facade has interruptions to allow for it to articulate, we're doing the same with our roof.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is, if you're gonna say this is what we're gonna do, then I'd like to have somewhere where it says you're gonna do that.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
Sure, okay.
Or not, whatever you choose.
Either in language or a clear graphic that is referenced as the responsible
Right.
image that's to be created.
Because while you may do this, and I hope that you do, zoning is written for anybody who does it. So we may get somebody who comes in 5 years from now, if this doesn't proceed, and says, I didn't tell you I'd do that.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, understood. Again, the center point is just to call attention to how you get to the main entrance that connects both the independent living and assisted living. So that Corpus share, which you see at the front entry piece here, that's covered, allows for all visitors, any residents to come directly into that main intersection. It's also going to be a specific height to allow hospitals to drive, or ambulances or any EMT vehicle to be able to pass underneath. That's all considered within the architecture. Moving on to the back end, again, you've seen this elevation, but this is just a representation of the villas, and we'll get into a little more detail in a second. But this is just an idea to kind of help you understand how the villas will connect to the main building. One thing to consider, we are very far away from those intersections, so this view is kind of a drone view. This is our retention, not the main big retention, so perspective might be a little deceiving. This intersection, I think, is a little shy of 300 feet from the intersection of Grant Park Boulevard. The connection to Dartown on 181st is almost 600 feet, so it's very far away. So we want to make this architecture as prominent and seen as possible.
I think you get those flipped.
Did I?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's
300 from Dartown
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
600 from, that sounds more right, yeah. But the idea here is we're making it very, very present without overwhelming the site and kind of dominating the view line. So there will be a lot of ability to take advantage of the nature that is already on the site, especially with that drainage ditch kind of defining that northern edge. Next, so what we did is we put together just kind of this front facade to kind of give you an idea of what a 50% brick could look like. Again, we're using this facade to kind of define that base with the heavier brick. You can kind of see the line and the color works. Again, color is just implied here. But then we can do these peaks where we're allowing for that brick to rise all the way to the top. It matches our architectural style, that kind of Georgian feel. We use those details like the chimneys to kind of bring that eye a little higher. And then we'll use the hardy plank, the lap siding, to really define kind of the lightweight components. So you've got these really heavy anchors to kind of hold everything in place, and then these fillars, which is our hardy plank. And then we'll use the porches, ornamental columns to kind of define those key elements, and then again, focalize on the center point, which is our main entry piece.
So this is 60% brick. requirement.
60, sorry, yeah. You run point and I'll just show the pictures.
Nathan, do you have in the presentation the Brookside photos?
I do,
Okay.
at the end, yeah.
Okay.
So this is the main building, front entry. We have a couple just models to help. This is a way for us to kind of understand expectations. Is it 60% on the end?
It is, yeah.
So what we wanted to do here, and we worked directly with the Wheelers on kind of their understanding of brick percentages and really what their desire was for this site as well. So what we're seeing on this top right corner are those end units. The Villa 1 that faces Dartown, Villa 3 and 4 which face the intersection of 181st and Grand Park. You see where our high line above the roof, or above the main walls are all brick. And those corners really bring that eye, that weight to that corner. We use that chimney as kind of an ornamental piece, and then these roof slopes just to help accent the piece. So really, the only portion of this that is hardy is above our roof, or a bearing point for our roof line. And then on all the other typical units, we'll have the lower table, which is our windowsill. We use the chimney as kind of the main portion of that brick height, and then use this water table to kind of wrap around the building.
Are they gonna have chimneys?
It's not coming through.
The end units will have fireplaces. Yeah.
Okay.
With
They'll-
full height chimneys.
Can we pause real quick? We just realized that when we switch computers, that this is no longer being part of the
Of course.
Teams recording.
Okay.
So are you able to
Sure.
throw that file onto this and then we
Yep.
can go back to the other system? Sorry about that.
Did IT email you about it?
No, I noticed it.
And it's in the red frame, right?
Yeah.
Still have a green light.
Yeah. The voices are recording.
Yeah, it's
just-
still, the screen voice is recorded, it's not the screen.
Well, whatever was left up on the screen is
Yeah.
probably still.
Sorry, I didn't.
Okay, while we're kind of taking a break, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that there are a lot of things being presented, and while a lot of details are probably not important, some of the things I want to see in the ordinance, if you're really gonna do some of these big strong points. I mean, I don't expect everything, but
Yeah, no,
Memorialize.
I just
I
wrote
mean,
down
I
the,
would-
any,
I-
I just wrote down any units with chimneys, I mean, I think that
yeah, those kind of big points that I think, and if you're not going to or you don't want to, that's okay, but if that's part of a selling thing, for me at least, I would like to see it somewhere.
So we took the approach this time of trying to minimize our edits to the,
Right.
to the ordinance. That was the goal as we worked through this. But,
That works for me.
but we can add back in some of these things that are important. To your point, if we don't include them, they're not the law and we don't have to incorporate them. So
Reviewing it, it's kind of challenging because you have to get out the Wheeler PUD, the UDO, and then keep going to each section to see, it's like, okay,
Yes.
does this apply, does this not apply?
I know.
And it's so, for me, it was kind of a giant headache. I'm sure for staff it took a little extra time, but.
All of them are giant headaches for me, because you have to do that with all the PUDs, especially
But this
if
one
they're a
seems
sub
exceptionally
PUD.
difficult because it's like, here's the, this kind of building, these things apply.
What if
This
we got
doesn't
rid
apply
of
here, it
PUDs?
applies here.
Staff report.
And when you're dealing with the UDO and the Wheeler
Yeah, I know you
PUD,
do, that's really
and now
good.
you're
So I
wanting your
don't know
own.
if she
You're
read
the
it or
only
not.
community that
So,
has.
so the reason we did that,
I use your staff
honestly, is
report.
because the Wheeler
Take a
She's talking about like
PUD treated the two buildings differently.
line by line, so.
Because the larger building is a commercial building, and therefore is subject to its own.
Don't know what else
I
I can
find
do.
that, happens.
Smaller buildings or multifamily buildings, subject to different regulations. And so our intent was to try to marry those as much as possible.
When I came here.
And that's what we were trying to do. It was already complicated. We tried to make it a slight tad less complicated. I don't know if I achieved that or not, but that was the intent. Because when we started working with Caleb on this a year ago, we started, oh yeah, that means, because this is not a multifamily building, because it's predominantly uses other than multifamily.
That was a different flash, yeah, I didn't use that one.
That makes a commercial building, and then suddenly, so we're trying to marry them up and have similar standards applicable to both buildings. So that's why we did it that way. So the multifamily standards apply generally to both buildings now versus having commercial to one and multifamily to the other. That was the structure we were trying to get to. To try to provide some ease.
So we don't feel like we're out in the woods going, what is that?
Well,
And I think Caleb did a good job in his staff report, preparing a lot of those things. Right.
It's not just that window, it's the whole screen.
Yes, that's what
Question for you, and you only represent this piece of real estate and not the entirety of the Wheeler PUD. This kind of project was able to be done somewhere else in the project, but not this piece of ground in this district. Is there a way, and I don't know, cause it's making some people uncomfortable just with the amount, again, we had our fire chief here and stuff, to say that this would be the only project of this nature in the PUD?
being an assisted living facility.
We would love to say that, I'm sure the Wheelers would have.
And I'm saying that because it's already gotten to be where it's a big challenge for us as a community because of these runs. And to know that there's still then eligibility to see this project elsewhere in this PUD, and you're asking to have this ability again on this piece. It's potentially more, that's
So
what I'm saying.
I'll push back just a little bit and say the reason we chose this site is because we were told not by Grand Park. So that takes out the area threes, there's, I don't have the whole map in front of me. I don't know that there's a bunch of area 3 that's left to be developed, that's not adjacent to Grand Park. So that's part of, we're here because we were told we like the product, but not by Grand Park. So we.
It just goes back to this problem that we have things that come up that alter one piece of the real estate, but then we're not going back and looking at the entirety to say if that's appropriate then when we move something else basically from where we
And
thought
I
it
have
would
a
go.
question on that. I think it's a good question. I'm not sure they can make that commitment on this particular parcel. The Wheelers could change their PUD, but I think the first question I would have is there place on the Wheeler Landing PUD that would allow this type of project? Is there land still available to do this? There's no limit on the number of these that could be in the Wheeler Landing PUD.
As it's currently written, correct, but area 3 would be the area within Wheeler Landing that allows assisted living facilities. And, I mean, what Russell was saying up by Grand Park is one area. The only other area that I'm aware of, just quickly looking at this on the spot, would be adjacent to Grand Park Boulevard, that goes all the way up to Grand Park.
Okay.
So, and that's what would be the leftover portion that's east of the KCG apartment complex that went into that giant square
Right.
up there. All the other area 3s either have apartments, a planned hotel, restaurant uses, and it goes all the way down to 32. So none of those sites I don't believe would be big enough to handle this proposed site plan. So there's really kind of other, I mean, besides the one along Grand Park Boulevard, there
So,
aren't
and
any
there, and that would be a permitted use by right on that
It would
property
be,
right
yeah.
now. So
They-
there's not much we can do about that.
They might run up to the unit count, multifamily unit count, depending on what they propose.
Right.
Which is a conversation we have had, that
Right.
whatever it is that we might approve in a location like this where it wasn't anticipated, doesn't in effect increase the number of units that are available because it just reallocates them. But the max is the max is the max.
Right, and that's a matter of political will, if the future council decides
True.
to expand it or not, but we're telling people that that's not what we foresee in the future and would not recommend it, at least for this APC.
This current body's going to be loath to recommend
Right.
to this or future council do something different.
So the
We're pretty
property,
locked
yeah.
in on this.
Right, so the property that this is on does not permit this use. So I think Cindy's question is, there are other properties that would permit this use in the Wheeler Landing. And I don't think these people can say, you know, we can stop that, they don't have the power. But it's a potential for the council or someone to have that discussion with somebody, if that's,
Cause this amendment is specific to the legal description of this property. What you're asking, it would have to be the entire 321 acres.
And again,
of
it's the
the-
conversation we've had a multitude of times here, that we say we're opening up the PUD, and so you're opening up the whole thing, but you're not.
We never have.
And,
That's
and,
never been
but
the
that's the
impression.
issue, because you're
that was
amending.
that was Kevin Buckheit's approach.
You're amending a part of something that's part of a bigger combination project, and then you change this one thing, but you never go back. And you never look to say, well, does it alter something over here? And that's where we've actually had issues that have come about because of that. And it's just weird to me that we approve something as a whole, but then it gets pieced off and everything is separated out again. And it's like,
How do you do that
Well,
when?
just to pause, I don't know if is representatives of Wheeler, are they online the call, are they virtually attending?
I don't know if they are or not.
Okay, cause that'd be a question for them, because I know that they look at every single request, and I know that they've told me
in a lot of conversations, and this is just my account, so they would ultimately know, but they go through the screening process of all the users that come in. So the only property to the left in Wheeler Landing that would by right allow assisted living facility would literally be adjacent to this site. So for them to put two of them in close proximity, working on this project in 2018, that does not seem like an approach the Wheelers would take. Again, I'm not advocating for them, but it just knowing their patterns and how they bring in projects, it doesn't seem like something they would do.
The only thing I would add to that, they don't control all the property in the Wheeler Landing PUD. The property they don't control, the Wheeler Landing PUD, where they remonstrated against our petition in January, February. And not because it was a use, it was about the proximity to the airstrip. So I don't see, they've told us the airstrip's not going anywhere. So I don't imagine that their remonstrance to noise-sensitive uses is going anywhere either.
No, and Cindy, I understand your concerns, because when we originally wrote the PUD ordinance, the first one, for Brookside, or for Bridgewater, and that was a long process with Kevin Buckheit, we talked about this, and that it is a whole, and if you change part of that whole, then the entire thing should be open to be looked at, because it may affect what the rest of it is. And what we've done since then is basically, and this has nothing to do with you guys, I'm just talking to staff, and that if we change part of that, we had one in particular that had some high-density housing, but there was a big portion that was gonna be a park. It was on the north side of 32, east of 31, across from Rowdebush, back in there somewhere, Andover or something like that. And they developed the whole thing except the park. And then the person who owned that land said, what am I supposed to do with this? And so I think it ended up being more houses. But that was a PUD that had a park and then high density, and it was a package. And when we lost that, it changed the whole nature of the PUD. So I don't know whether this is a staff project or to talk with the council on what we, but I think it's again, not for your project. I think it's a good project. I think it's in the right place. This is just me, but that's what can happen. The whole concept of this unit is now being destroyed, and I don't know
The
how we do that.
expectations, though, at the time we went down the first effort in the path of having PUDs, was not what it actually has become, and maybe it
That's
never
right.
really was that, but short of stipulating something procedurally and maybe even requiring whomever it is, the Wheelers in this case, to be a part of every meeting where everything is discussed, so we can in fact say, look, they're doing this, can you assure us there isn't gonna be another one, and have everybody here. I don't know how practical or
Well, and the other thing
legal
that.
or whatever that might be, but
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that needs to be fleshed out somehow or other. But we can help these guys get done tonight.
Right, right, and the other thing was that, the PUD was written, it was under one ownership of and control, and now what happens is, after the initial PUD is passed, then it all gets flipped. So I mean, I think our PUD ordinance is sadly in need of assistance, and I'll stop.
Okay.
I like your project.
Moving on. So, do you have more slides to go through?
Yeah, let me go back to the facade study. So again, the top image is the 60% end units for the Villa 1, Villa 3, and Villa 4, which are all facing major intersections. So the most visible of the intersections will have that higher brick percentage. The remaining units that are close to each other will have that 25%, which is that water table. And you'll see that kind of theme throughout the rest of those villas.
You just said 2 would have 60%?
Three, Villa 1, 3, and 4.
That's not shown on the.
3 and 4 are shown as 25% on the ends.
Yeah, that's the whole one then. Yeah, so the end units that are facing the intersection would also be 60%.
So that may need to be, that's an
So
update.
2 greens need to become orange.
Yep. I didn't put that in this presentation, did I?
Yeah, and just to back up, the reason we did 25% was the internal facing, that they're relatively, I think, 20-foot or 30-foot side yard setback, so
The
they're
other
very.
greens are fine,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, all right.
Not the same issue, but yeah, those two right there.
So those two, and then the Villa Lawn along Dartown.
Okay, go ahead.
That I think is kind of the remaining pieces.
So the other question that we had, I think there was a question that at the commission related to the cover, we talk about the rear elevations and 50% of the rear elevations exclusive of areas that are covered porches. Someone asked that question and why we were doing that. I think the goal there, because those are recessed pretty substantially, was to push the masonry out to a visible facade and not something that's under roof and.
Can you go back to the water column?
Yeah. So we talked about eliminating those from the calculation, so they don't, not pro or con, because they're eliminated. So your 50% then would be, yeah, on those bigger those bigger and more visible elevations. Mail Brown has not made a decision whether those would be screened or not. Screening is a possibility that those would be screened in back porches, which I think would also just further push why do you have masonry inside of a screened back porch where you're not going to see, most people from the exterior are never going to see any masonry on a screened in. I have a covered porch that's smaller than that, and I can tell you my neighbors couldn't tell you if my back porch is masonry or not masonry, and that was part of our discussion. So we did put a size restriction on that. It had to be at least 100 square feet of covered area, so that the goal being that we're pushing that out to the exterior elevation. I think it actually is a benefit to 50% because we're excluding that from the calculation, so we're pushing more out to the facade. So I just want to make sure, I don't think that was as clear in our original presentation, but I want to make sure we talked about that.
I just want the planning commission to know that the council has had a thought that they do not want to see any architectural standards reduced. And so the idea of reducing the masonry requirement was not popular with them. Just wanted to share that.
We did have the discussion about the recessed areas. I would have a slightly different take on that 100 square feet is one thing. But how far in depth does that 100 square feet go? Is it something that's 30 feet by 4 feet?
These are, I think, what,
Or
10
is
by
it-
14? I think they're 10 deep, 9 or 10 deep, I think are the
They're
covered
close to that,
porches,
yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I wasn't
I would-
trying to be cute. I was trying to give you something that was substantial.
But if it's not deep enough,
Fair
then
enough.
I would submit that it's probably something that ought to be visible and maybe like the ends of villas 3 and 4, the backs of 1, 2, 3, and maybe even 4, 6, and 8. Although that's a much greater distance across 2 ponds, but maybe those need to be a little different. I would also agree that screening will mask some of that. I would just think though that those face to the north towards 181st probably are visible enough that I would view those differently.
Yeah, and I guess I think of it not so much as just a visual, but this is how you build a house, and it seems like we require 360-degree architecture on multifamily. So now we're starting to split hairs. I don't know where you stop splitting hairs. And I understand your explanation, it's purely from a viewpoint view. I have a little bit different view on, I don't know, what a house should look like or whatever, but I guess I have kind of the same feeling as the council. We've gone back on a lot of standards, and I'm just, how much more?
I just want the masonry to make sense.
Yeah.
When you stop at a corner because it met the criteria and you got the percent, but that's clearly just tacked on.
Yep.
I'd rather have less masonry make sense than hit a number and have it clearly just a facade.
And I think that's where we were going, that those gables on the back that pop out of the building, if those whole things are masonry, that makes sense instead of trying to kind of force a specific percentage, so.
Well, and I think you said it much better than I did. It has to make sense. So to stop at a corner, just because that's all your requirement, if it has to go around a corner to make it look right, it should. And I don't know how you write that, but Andre said exactly what I was.
I'm just gonna
I was
write that
thinking.
masonry has to make
Has to
sense.
make sense, yeah.
To Ginny.
You really really great
Yeah,
tool.
well, that would be.
Yeah, and so,
That'll be great that'll be great at the permitting level.
Yeah.
right, yeah, it has to be enforceable and clearly,
It's a fair.
which is why to me it should just go around, but cause I don't know how to write that in a different way.
When you say you're taking that out, are you really taking it totally out of the calculation? Because you just referenced that going all the way to the peak of the gables with masonry makes sense. In looking at an enlarged version on my screen here of that same view, you have to be counting the recessed part. Otherwise, what you've got is what would, by the same kind of calculation, be 100% masonry. Because all three of those are the only things that are out there, everything else is set back, so it shouldn't be 25% of what's on the exterior building line. It's gotta include the recess part, or you could really end up with very little masonry there.
Yeah, I don't know how you write this.
We can go back and, I mean, points are well taken. We're trying to push masonry out to where it's visible instead of where, from our perspective, it was
Right.
not visible.
And I don't argue with the premise at all, and like Andre, I think we've had some masonry discussions that went on ad nauseum, and when you go out and you see the finished product, it's like, what's the point? And from a personal perspective, I also sometimes have difficulty talking about masonry as such an important item, because I have 3 courses of brick and a big tall chimney. Everything else is hard plank. I don't have a house that would look good in my estimation in brick. It also doesn't have the amount of relief in windows that it would have to have today, but I think it's a pretty darn good looking house. And it's, it's country lane red, the only one in the entire 700 building neighborhood I live in.
That's right.
It's very distinctive.
It's
I think it.
Bob
I
is
think-
very proud of his house.
I am.
You're making
Yes,
yourself
but
very
I'm-
easy to find.
He should be.
I'm trying to illustrate a point, though, that there's examples where
Well,
let go of the brick because there's other good viable looks that just don't include
I think that's
much,
the
if any, at
problem,
all
is
brick.
we haven't had many architectural standards, I mean, at least up until a while ago, when we did pass at least the ones that, for perimeter views. You know, if you remember on the primary arterials, secondaries even, I think. And there was that point system, and again, it was just trying to get some kind of decent architecture that was normalized in some way.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, it just went back to masonry, and because it was like not vinyl, and then it was like, okay, we want all this masonry. And I think what the council is really wanting is just really, really good architecture and permanence.
That's right.
They don't want something cheap going in and being, you know, kind of downgrading the area. They want something that's gonna last.
With high standards for whatever it is that are consistently applied.
Yeah.
like Brookside Villas?
So that's all you have to do, Russell.
I have to solve how many years of issues
All you
in
gotta do.
2 weeks.
Yeah, you've been before us a lot of times over the years, so.
Okay.
You've
Is that
seen
what
our
you're talking
evolution
about?
and-
There's that's a front porch, but are you talking a covered porch where it would be?
So
that one has
just
a-
on the back.
Yeah,
Yes, and the
and that's
back
not big
porches are
enough.
much deeper than that. This
Yeah.
is like a 4-foot depth, these are 10-foot depth,
Yeah,
so it's
so
over
that
twice
doesn't
that
qualify because it's not big enough, and that's exactly the question I asked, because we're not trying to get this to qualify where that wouldn't count, because that's not the intention, because it's
Right.
very visible.
Right.
And so I think that was when I was helping to draft, that's not what I want to be excluded. I want to be something like my porch, which is 10 by 12, and I look at it and there's portions of it, I'm like, I would rather have that masonry somewhere else than in this place that I'm the only one that sees it. Maybe that's my own, like Mr. Jorge, I'm proud of my house too, but there's things I would change a little bit about it.
And maybe there's some way to talk about how deep it ran, I don't know.
I think that's.
I think when we were talking about the screened-in porches at the last meeting, there was a comment about maybe having some sort of half wall towards the bottom and not having the screen go all the way down.
Yeah.
If that's the approach we take, with that brick, you wouldn't see it anyways, because that would be, the porch wall would be probably 3 feet and down. So all that brick on that lower portion would be covered up anyways.
And that would not be excluded from the calculations, because that would be facade materials that would have to be calculated. So probably what you would have is you'd have a brick water table.
Yep.
And then you'd have your screened-in porch, that would be part of your facade that would be
Right,
counted.
right.
So,
This is a good illustration, not Not that it's directly applicable, this is not a screen porch, but again, my comment about making sense, cause it doesn't. And if you were to think about how the building would be constructed, the water table mimics a stone foundation or whatever. And yet here clearly you're transitioning from plank to brick at that corner, thank you for the cursor right there. What would make sense to me in this one is that sidewall returning to the left of the door would be full height masonry up to the spring point of the gable. If you needed to offset some masonry for cost, then you would stop the masonry at 9 feet or whatever that is on the front, you'd put plank above it on the garage as well. But you'd actually have two walls that meet, that look like they make sense. Again, I know this isn't directly applicable for yours, but
But that's good.
that's the illustration, I
Yep.
think, of what I'm going toward.
And just to add on, the way that the proposed ordinance right now is read is that it still has the UDO's diversity of materials standard apply, meaning that each building facade shall utilize a minimum of 2 different exterior building materials. And the different style of the same building material does not constitute 2 different building materials. So there would still be at least 2 different building materials required on the facades that we're talking about.
So this facade would need, to Mr. Malley's point, that would need a second material because that's a singular material, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So to your point, that's how you start to build in making sense.
But that facade includes the whole thing, doesn't it? Not just the part sticking out.
Each building
So-
facade, so how we define building facade.
Yeah, isn't that whole front that we're looking at?
Maybe the whole thing then, so you maybe need it.
So it does have 2 different materials if it's not just that piece above the garage.
It does not make sense.
Because that would be an unfortunate application.
Yeah, it would, I think it means the whole side I'm looking at.
Yeah, the definition refers
You
to the
wouldn't meet that
exterior
requirement.
elevation.
Right, so it's the whole side, so that would mean
Top of
that.
the gable,
Yeah, that would, yeah.
considering.
Otherwise, they're really going down a
But,
rabbit hole.
but when we were talking about the porches on the back just being one material,
Uh-huh.
it would still require 2 materials on the back there too, so. Because that's not being modified, so all the elevations, all the facades of all, it would still require at minimum 2 materials per the PUD, even what they're proposing. What they're proposing modifying is just in relation to the masonry percentage requirements.
Okay.
Right now, they're not changing material number, quantities of materials, they're just changing the percentage of masonry, that's what they're proposing.
Okay,
Other than making suggestions, I don't think there's a way we can write this.
so let me pause the in-house discussion for a moment, invite Dave Schmitz, who apparently missed part of what we were talking about when the computer change happened, but have you heard enough that you have anything you would like to weigh in with, or are you thinking we're nailing it all?
No, I'm fine with the discussion. I agree with Bob and Andre about the masonry and having it be sensible and architecturally appropriate, more so than just hitting a number. Now, how you put that in an ordinance, that's the petitioner's job to do. But other than that, yeah, I did miss some of it, but I think I can catch up on that with the renderings as the next meeting approaches. Thank you.
Okay, jump back in if anything else comes to mind. I think exhausting our dialogue here. Does anybody else have questions, concerns to bring up?
One little question, how deep are those driveways in front of the units?
Ours are 30 feet. Are you showing from the face? Or
I mean-
this specifically, or our
In what you're proposing?
our proposed is a 30-foot, yeah,
From curb to garage door.
from curb to garage, yeah.
So that's enough room, isn't it? Park
Well,
the car out in the
the
driveway?
important distance is from the sidewalk
to
to the garage.
That's what I'm saying, so
And there's at least what, how long do you need for a car? 11 feet, 12 feet, something like that?
18 is the standard.
Standard
Small
parking
car.
spot is at least
Yeah,
2
usually we use 20-foot offset as kind of a defining line and then build from there.
The reason I think she's asking is we had, years and years ago, we had a subdivision. And the driveways, the distance between the garage and the sidewalk was so short that the cars parked on the sidewalk. And I was out there one day, little kids are on their tricycles going like this and then out in the street and then back on the sidewalk.
There won't be any kids and tricycles in this neighborhood.
No, but there might be people
There'll be people
in
walking.
wheelchairs and
No, absolutely.
with mobility issues. And
I
the
think that
only-
was just a fluke, so
We
I
always
don't.
think that there's not going to be cars sitting out in a driveway, but there's always cars in a driveway and people use the garage as storage. So it's something that I've just come to expect, so I just wanna make sure that it's deep enough. Where you can still have that sidewalk.
And that could also be a code enforcement issue as well. The car encroaching into the sidewalk, so we could deal with that on the back end through enforcement.
Yeah, the problem is there's not much you can do about it.
Right. On-street parking.
You need to buy a little bitty
Buy a small car.
Volkswagen.
So my
Can't park.
my driveway is only this wide, so I don't park in my driveway. 3 feet, so. That's how you avoid parking in your driveway.
Do you have any specific landscape plan other than, I see like 4 trees maybe, around your parking garages?
No, we have not developed a landscape plan, and the UDO, or the Wheeler Landing defaults to the UDO. And when we talked about it, I mean, part of this is we are still in the preliminary design on this site, given some of the uncertainties related to the drainage. I think we've avoided that expense at this point. So no, we're defaulting to the UDO. I would ask staff about how they would treat those green areas between the garages and the drives. I mean, I think in reviewing your UDO, I think there are plenty of places for it to, have obligations on things like that. But yeah, we've not gone, defaulting to the UDO was how the ordinance is written and how we intended to move through.
No, I meant for your accessory buildings, for the parking structures, for the 16 garage.
Yeah, no, this is intended to be representative, but not.
But I mean, are you wanting to keep it to 16? I mean, is this kind of the representation of what we could expect? Or are you going to increase it to 40 spaces in a garage or something
Oh,
like
no,
that?
no, I think we can write, if that's a concern, we could probably.
I think we're 18 currently?
18 right
Yeah,
now.
we
Two structures.
could write that into the
Yeah.
PUD, that's not a problem.
And you don't have any exhibits on what that would look like, correct?
The accessory buildings,
Or the garage?
no, we do not have anything included in there.
Do we have a requirement for assisted living facilities for how many parking spaces they need? I mean, they may not be there yet, but we have it for all kinds of other things. I didn't know if we had something like this.
It might fall under the multifamily visiting standard.
It could be that, or just the general multifamily standard, which is so many per unit, I believe.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we might wanna check that, because I don't want them to find out they have to put in 30 more parking spaces as
Yes.
part of that requirement.
2 spaces per dwelling unit.
Parking, just parking, not covered parking, but just regular.
Just
parking.
Per unit, both count, so.
Okay, and
Yeah, we should have
the
more than
assisted
that.
living unit wouldn't have a big requirement either.
It falls under, there's not a specific requirement for assisted living. It refers to based upon data supplied by the applicant in
Okay,
response to
good,
traffic,
good.
so.
So they aren't gonna get stuck with you having to put in a whole bunch more.
Right.
Okay, good.
But if the concern is, are we gonna put 60 covered parking spaces, I think the answer is no. We can certainly cap that if there's a concern about that are not, because the villas will have either 1 car or 2 car attached to them, so.
Yeah, so in this the reason I'm bringing this up is we just approved not too long ago a project at 161st in Union. And their concept plan showed a certain amount of parking garages or whatever in a certain location. But it wasn't tied specifically to appear that way, and so their development plan was compliant. And the parking was not at all where I thought it was gonna be anyway, and what was sold to me and what was in the concept plan, it was switched. And it seemed more than what was represented and in a different place. And it just kind of changed the feel from the right of way for the whole thing, so. Again, I was just wanting to understand because you don't talk about how much of it you're gonna have, and that's the only bit we have to go by.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and, I mean, so obviously you have, so I guess I wanna
Okay, I see it.
back up. Is there a concern about if you go back to that example, is there a concern that you want it to be only double loaded parking between building front and Dartown? I mean, I guess that starts to get to, you know.
I guess at this point, I'm less concerned about that and I'm more concerned about these actual parking structures. And, you know, and just like, I would hate to see it be put in front of a building obstructing something or interfering with landscape or something that was important to us in another part of the project to see, to make it make sense, and then have it be changed, and then not what we expected.
Just put that the parking structures will be internal to the development or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, are you referring to Lantern Commons and those parking structures?
Yeah,
We do have a substantial compliance with the concept plan.
that was not supposed to be
Okay.
the
So
streetscape
that's
that we were.
included. I would certainly argue
Sold.
that putting
And the number of those things wasn't so
Yeah.
much.
sweeping is not
No,
substantial.
that should
because
cover
the
it.
Orientation changed so dramatically.
And just on top of that, if we saw a revised concept plan and we see that substantial compliance, the way we've always typically applied that is if they shift those covered like a foot or two in
Sure,
that
that's
general
no big
direction,
deal.
it's fine.
Sure.
But if they're proposing it like on the west side of that independent living, that yellow, that's not substantially compliant.
Okay.
We wouldn't
Good.
allow something like that.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if they had put in substantial compliance, so that's
I
good.
had to double check, I thought we did, but yes, we do.
Thank you.
Parking garage number, we can certainly cap, so we're not showing you 18 and then there's 50.
Yep.
That's a fair accessory building.
Smaller one actually on, this says 8 cars, but it's really only 6.
We've updated it.
Good plan. All right. We addressed everybody's questions, thoughts, concerns. David Schmitz, any final thoughts?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, do we have any bullet points to recap before we move on?
So the numbered of covered parking spaces, we're gonna write language to address a cap on those. There is a mention of exhibits on what they'll look like. Is that something that commissioners want
The
to
accessory
do?
buildings, I mean, we've built in that essentially they'll comply, I mean, there's a standard in there related to masonry requirements on accessory buildings, I mean, I think if we're being asked to add to Dr. Kelleher's comment about adding some roof requirements and some of those things, I think we would probably
I think
make
it was
those.
the chimneys and
Yeah,
the roof.
the dormers and some of those things. I think we would probably make those applicable only to the multi-use building. And so we would probably just carve out that we don't have to have a chimney or a dormer on the garage, but I mean, I think, so those start to be the things that we would,
Yeah, it was the, big building mainly, and then the,
so I think we would probably expect to be, you know, have those be compliant with the standard, with the others, generally applicable standards unless otherwise referenced, but they do have masonry requirements included in the ordinance for accessory buildings.
We don't have a sunset in here yet, I just wanted to add that in, and I know that there might be some disagreement about how those are done, but the council has been wanting to see that, so just tell you now up front.
Understand.
I have not thought about that, or we're not really upfront anymore. But we're not at the end either, so better now than next time. So, all right,
Other than
continuing.
the roof variation, standards, the covered parking spaces, the only other discussion that was brought up, in relation to this specific project was, masonry requirements as it relates to the porches.
Size of the rear patio, depth requirements, and then just working through how it makes sense. Updating our exhibits, we had a couple exhibit changes we need to update.
Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Any other questions from the petitioner team?
Nope.
Well, we'll see you at some future meeting then.
You will.
check out the forced root growth, growing trees. Pushing that because they'll just grow faster. You can come to my house and see my reforestation.
And Bob's color of his house, it's the
That's
only
right.
one.
Go see the red house?
It's
and
not so
then we'll
much,
see the-
it's not so much the red as it's just the design and it doesn't really dictate.
really unique.
I've gotta have brick.
Oh, the fun part, Jenny, is they're putting some trees in where they shouldn't go and then putting growth inhibitors on trees now.
What?
Yes,
Really?
yes. Isn't that weird? Suburbia, you don't want your, tulip to grow too big next to your house, right? So then you're.
So you
putting on
plant
a-
it farther away from the house.
No, you don't have the ability, you're on a small lot.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, growth inhibitors. They recommended
We're
that
making
for my
life
tulip
way
next to my
too
deck, and I was
complicated.
like, you gotta be kidding me, and then they recommended it too much.
Used to be simple. Sure,
I was given a growth inhibitor as a child.
6-7 years.
Same, actually. Thank you.
Thank you.
The city council update. Come on now.
Moving on, we have 3 items continued to a future meeting that probably don't need anything further tonight. Staff has one delegated item from long ago that is listed here to provide maybe just a very brief explanation for if anybody has questions or not.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a lot to say on that one. This is the Central Park for Westgate. Per the UDO, all development amenities and residential subdivisions are delegated to staff for approval. So this is really just to provide you with information that it has been submitted, reviewed, and approved. So we should start to see construction happening soon. I know there's been some discussion lately about this one specifically and taking a little bit of time. We can only review it as we receive it, so it's come in and it's ready to build. I think the first permit, there's gonna be a couple of permits associated with this, because there's a couple of buildings, but the main clubhouse building permit has been reviewed. I don't know that we've issued it yet. I think we're still waiting on a few final items, but it should be issued soon if it hasn't already been. So that's how close they are to going vertical on some of it.
All right. Reports and comments. Is there anything from amongst our plan commissioners for each other? City council liaison?
The council met last Monday. The 2024 non-elected official salary ordinance was approved with an amendment, keeping the 2023 salaries, but allowing for the new positions that the new administration is requesting. There were 2 2023 $6 million bond issue ordinances. The first one was not approved, the second one was. And that'll be providing additional resources for fire and certain infrastructure projects not in EDAs, so not in TIF areas. Stop me if anyone's got questions. The Wheeler PUD amendment for the YMCA was approved. Public hearing was held for the 2024 budget. A resolution was passed to dispose of the Mill Street parcel across from Grand Junction that's currently owned by the city to allow for its development. It's in really, really bad shape. We passed a resolution to restore the facade improvement fund balance from negative. Essentially, there was some kind of misunderstanding or technicality that played out that it actually got below where it should have been. And so it's properly funded now. We passed a resolution to authorize clerk treasurer to transfer surplus GO bond proceeds. Those were from GO bonds, I think from 2018-19 maybe, small amount. Had an introduction of an ordinance approving RDA bonds and the related matters for the Grand Junction Plaza. It's basically the process of converting the bands for the original financing to the long-term bonds and what we go through with leases and all that. And the 2024 elected official salary ordinance, which is the same as this year, and that was introduced. Then there was another GO bond additional appropriation matter. This one was for 2022, and that was basically a housekeeping one too. There's an updated traffic ordinance that was introduced, And if you have comments, you better get them into John fast. John Hill. Clerk Treasurer's Office has doubled the city's investments this year. And they were having an interview with Standard & Poor's about reviewing our bond rating. So I guess that's pretty big. And Troy mentioned he would like to revisit moving to second-class city status. And I think that ordinance is being brought forward this week, next week, this meeting.
Down to the wire here.
So, there we go, that's it.
It should have happened the first time.
What would you say, Bob?
Just muttering under my breath. I thought it should have happened the first time it was introduced.
That's interesting. Probably should have.
So, all right. There was a BZA meeting. Mr. Schmitz.
BCA met last Tuesday and approved 3 variances. The first was the use variance to permit indoor auto sales on the building that was previously a Mako. Before that was called Tin Ranch on 32, north side of 32, west of 31. That was approved to permit indoor auto sales within that business that's presently operating there. Excuse me, Estridge sought approval for signage on their Midland project just south of 32, just south of the Midland Trail and ditch. Residential sign, wall sign on that barn amenity structure that is presently built. We went over with both the signage and landscaping that is proposed for that, because it's looks out of place right now. But that development standards variance was approved. Finally, a standards variance for property on 199th Street, a little west of Tomlinson. It's an AGSF 1 lot on a non-conforming lot. They wanted to build a barn, which would be okay, except they wanted to use the barn for a tennis court rather than agricultural use, so they needed a variance because of the way the barn was to be used. They actually needed several variances to make it happen, and that was those were approved as well. And that was it.
Nobody's building swimming pools.
No swimming pool variance. How about that?
It's getting cold.
Next month.
Gotta get ready for spring, though. Not surprisingly, the plat committee has no report because we did not meet, and the next meeting is already canceled as well. Community Development Department, then, do you have some words of wisdom for us?
Yeah, the only, the last meeting, plan commission meeting, we approved a resolution to add additional builder to, what was that, Sycamore Glen?
Yeah.
So if you were at that meeting and voted, we have the resolution here that needs to be signed, so please don't leave without signing. I think that's everybody but Cindy in the room, so, cause you weren't there, right, at the last one?
Hmm.
Were you there? So Matt,
You wasn't.
so you three,
I think I was at the last.
were you?
Alright.
Well, we can, if, we'll double check it here before at the end of the meeting, make sure we got the right people signing it, but that was it. We need to get that signed so we can get it recorded and back over to the applicant. And Kristen, we know, is one of those, so we're working out with her, cause she's out of town, so.
We already have Dave's, so.
We have to. Good. So we'll.
You were present last time.
Okay, so my apologies. I knew it was one of you over there,
You wasn't here.
so.
You both look the same.
So Matt, we don't need.
So we don't need you to stick around unless you want to,
Oh, I don't need to sign anything?
No.
I don't need,
cause you weren't
I
there.
can't leave yet, though. We have to vote to adjourn.
you gotta adjourn it.
Is it?
Would you like to make a motion to
I'd
adjourn?
like to make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Deck has motioned it, and who, did you second it?
Yes, I did.
Seconded by Cindy Spolcharik. Since we now have a virtual attendee, let's go ahead and call a roll on this one. Everybody in favor of adjourning here?
Shows us.
Mr. Deck,
Yes.
Mr. Horke,
Yes.
Ms. Kelleher,
Yes.
Mr. Maui,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Sorry for causing the delay, but yes.
Ms. Full
Yes.
David is bunk beds.
adjourned.
He's by them a lot, it seems. And while I did acknowledge somewhere along the line when he was on and speaking, I have no idea when he actually joined the meeting.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Dave, do you have any?
It was right at the start of the presentation of, when Matt was talking at the very beginning, so
Not me.
I would say it was about 10 after, maybe 7:10.
Oh,
We'll make that note.
Pretty quick then.
We'll call it 7:10.
Usually up on the YouTube video, you can go back
Oh,
and
that's
look.
good.
Yeah. Check it out then.
You'll see it pop up on the screen.
Good call. All that stuff's now bindable.
It is. All right, so we've had the vote. We are adjourned at 8:54 PM.
You mentioned the tree inhibitors that are used in some places. So, we had a day trip yesterday, in St. Louis, the woods, up past Terre Haute, just beautiful campus.
Oh, yeah,
We just
it
walked all over it. And one of the things a friend and I were looking at was the trees. Across this tree, which apparently was a little too close to a light pole,
And I've got a couple bullet points.
Oh my God, oh yeah,
actually has grown.
yeah, yeah. I have those that grow.
Of all the things you see, fence posts and everything else is like, okay, I see that all the time. It's like the light.
Can actually
That's
know
amazing.
when they're driving through downtown.
That one's a little unique. They had a lot of them where they had put memorial signage that they hung, which is colloquially and weird.
I
They
know,
didn't
it's
put
weird.
all the like they needed
Documents,
to.
you know, it's
Or they had edging that's all grown into the roots, but that was unique.
Yeah, that's, I've never seen anything. It's amazing how powerful the little vines are that grow up walls,
So is there not another
stone
plank
walls,
with
and then just,
And destroy the main.
yeah, I keep looking at, as I get on some of the
Yes.
overpasses on
Because
31,
it's
and
a
I keep thinking,
Fifth Monday.
shouldn't they kill those
I
vines?
know, it happened so fast, which they look
So the
great,
next
but
one.
I just
Oh, yeah.
know it's destroying it.
Yep.
4 weeks.
November.
No, 3 weeks.
Is that the Wednesday?
Oh, wait, it'll be Wednesday, yeah.
Thank you.
It's not even the
Kevin,
I saw that.
Man.
I'm on a Woody Warehouse.
There's only 3 weeks till election.
What's the name of it? Woody?
Woody Warehouse. There's no reason that we shouldn't use, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah,
They're
it
amazing.
sounds like a
And they're
great,
cheap,
there's a huge cost difference.
and when I went out to,
But how far is Lisbon that you have to go get these things?
They can, I don't know.
It's west of Brownsburg.
it's west of Brownsburg.
I know of Lisbon from years ago.
Yep.
Used to pay much more attention to high school
Well,
football
they-
every week
It's
because
a
I had
really
a player.
good barbecue restaurant there.
They delivered mine because I had 500 and they planted them. They had
I
a
bet
couple
they
of
really liked
backhoes,
you,
and bobcats, and one dug the hole, the other dropped the key, and the other dug the hole, yeah. But that's what, they were supposed to plant 25% of these kind of trees at the west gate. And I walked out there the other day and just went up Little Eagletown Road and then went in there. There's a bunch of whips. Half of them are dead, the other half are gone. They are not compliant. And I'd be happy to talk to Lennar and take them to Woody Warehouse and show them, because this is not such a win-win for them or anybody else.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
my trees
I
are
usually
that
copy
tall,
it from
and
the
in
website,
5
but
years, I swear they were
staying here to get it done.
Well, and that's,
20 feet tall.